The following garbage was made possible by the patron support of Firebite27. When I'm reminded of Beast Wars Dinobot, I start thinking about the courage of King Leonidas and his army of 300 Spartans who took on Persia. Going against the wishes of the Greek oligarchs in what is essentially an unsanctioned suicide mission, he took his 300 men on what he described as a casual stroll and led his microscopic brigade of troops to kill off 250,000 Persian soldiers. King Leonidas wanted nothing more than to die gloriously in battle, and when he threw that spear knowing that everyone he fought beside was dead at the hands of the Persians, he exposed Xerxes as the false god that he was by throwing that spear past the golden stairs and right into his face, symbolizing a weapon going up the stairway to heaven and killing the false god. I always felt that King Leonidas won that battle, not just because he died gloriously in battle, but because he made a statement that shook the Persians' world. Dinobot is a Predacon ruled by a sense of honor. Much like King Leonidas, he lives to die gloriously in battle. When he aided Megatron in the theft of the Golden Disc, Dinobot believed he was in the pursuit of endless glory. But when he and the Predacon Pierce crashed on what seemed to be the wrong planet alongside a Maximal exploration vessel, he rebelled against Megatron and joined the Maximal team. It would be an uneasy alliance, fraught with turns of loyalty and turns of Shakespearean phrase. But it also led to strong friendships and even the salvation of all humanity. So why in a channel with so many shitty memes and cringe attempts at humor would I give you this overwrought emotional dialogue that's totally not stolen from the Transformers wiki page of Dinobot? For soulless corporate consumerism!
God damn it! You have no idea how long I've waited to review this fucking thing!
When I moved into my apartment, I was leaving my previous hometown, which had finally fixed their distribution, only to move to
Scalpertown, USA, population go fuck yourself.
You wanna know how bad I wanted this thing? I traded Topspin and Twin Twist for him, and paid international shipping to f***ing Singapore! But honestly, with a figure this glorious, yeah, this figure fucking slaps. While not perfect, this dinosaur mode looks phenomenal. It's a breathtaking Roger Rabbit effect figure with amazing texturing and detail that barely any figures on the market can compete with. Every sculpted and painted detail on this thing is luxurious. That head sculpt is dynamite. It picks out the wide-eyed emotional expression that Beast Wars characters had in their beast modes extremely well. Even his teeth are painted. His tongue is painted. The attention to detail on this thing is phenomenal, but this doesn't come without a fair share of issues. This figure does retain a mostly clean beast mode, but that falls apart slightly when you start going towards the back. The feet are obviously sticking out in the thighs, and while they attempt to blend in, they wedge into the raptor mode without a lot of subtlety. Like, it does have that brown and gray texturing going for it, which helps the colors to blend in, but it isn't facing parallel to the rest of the figure, so it just sticks out like a sore thumb. Yes, the legs are underneath the stomach of the raptor mode, but this thing's a retail Voyager, so I really didn't expect anything else. But can somebody please explain to me what in the holy hell these hands are supposed to be? It looks like it wants to be fabulous, but it winds up looking like a melted fudgicle. I have a hunch that the hands melted in the original casting of the mold and they didn't want to spend the money to fix it, or they already distributed it to the factory and started mass producing it. It doesn't get anywhere close to ruining the figure, but it doesn't exactly look great, does it? The inside of the legs also have a really bad case of Waffle House syndrome, meaning that they're just random hollow areas in the inside of the joint to minimize the plastic budget. I'm starting to hate this more and more every time I see it. It's one of my newest pet peeves that if you're going to start making a figure have hollow parts, they need to be hidden, or better yet, just not be there at all. Despite this fact, the cohesion of the dinosaur mode is executed with a level of grace and finesse that feels ahead of its time. Beast Wars figures have a much more difficult task to achieve a fantastic alt mode and robot mode than some of the more simplistic hand candy Generation 1 style figures, and in this case it definitely feels up to par with what it's trying to achieve. Listen, I understand this thing isn't perfect, but this is what I'm looking for. I could get the masterpiece for 250 actual US dollars, but why? I would much rather have a chug scale figure that sacrifices like 5 to 8% of its alt mode cohesion and 1 or 2 bells and whistles in exchange for looking stunning on every other front than have an overpriced convoluted engineering mindfuck that I want to throw in the garbage the first time I transform it. Kingdom Dinobot is a figure that I could spend hours animating. He's well constructed, the materials he's made with feel premium, and the painting and sculpting is to die for. Robot time, bitches! The transformation in robot mode is a perfect harmony of simplicity and complexity, mixed in with screen-accurate sensibilities. It doesn't feel compromised, but certain painted parts are going to grind against each other to get into place. While the tail is parts forming, it achieves its purpose in becoming the drill sword used in the show, so it gets brownie points with me. The robot mode you come out with looks absolutely friggin' dynamite. Look at that head sculpt! The red eyes and menacing unibrow are painted perfectly. The sculpt is to literally die for. He might not have his snarling teeth, but the wrinkled up mean bitch expression is still very much there and very much alive. The torso is painted in a monochromatic shade of grayish brown, but the colors are absolutely on point with the show. From the blue show accurate detail on the side and the blending of paint that plays off the texturing exceptionally well. The issue some people are going to have is the full forming it has to do in order for it to get here. For me, it's really not an issue. I don't even really consider it to be full forming, as it's not a design choice that's done out of laziness or malintent, as much as it is just the impossibility of making his head 4 times wider to become the chest. Beast Wars figures have a hell of a lot more demanding of a task transforming from an organic animal mode to a mechanical looking robot mode. They had to blend 2 completely different aesthetics into the same figure, so I give them a lot more leeway in this case. The paint chipping on this thing, if any, is kinda my fault. The robot legs can be a bitch to tuck underneath the Raptor mode, and getting them to line up with tabs isn't exactly the most user-friendly of processes, which led to paint chipping on the knees. Dinobot engages in all of the bells and whistles of a siege figure in terms of articulation. His head rotates, tilts up and down as well as side to side, the shoulders rotate and move up, bicep bend and rotation, wrist rotation, opening and closing fist and thumb, universal hips, knee bend, and ankle tilt. The joints are pretty standard for the most part, but the head is where the expressiveness of the figure really starts to come to life. The opening and closing hands make way for his swords and swooshy ass dipshit copter. This piece isn't really a weapon you can appreciate unless you turn off your brain for a second and just have some fun, you fucking planks. But you can get it to spin like no frickin' tomorrow, as the 5mm peg hole is just loose enough to allow it to spin freely, but just thick enough to not allow it to fall out. The hands actually came with a very clever solution to the problem that Jetfire had. Instead of a spring-loaded 5mm peg that pops out of his hand and doesn't work half the time, Dinobot just has the 5mm port installed in his hand and a peg that can be tabbed into place on his sword. This was a really clever but simple solution to holding his weapons better. But this is where we start to discuss some of the issues on this thing. The thing that worries me on this figure is some of the joints. The waist is stupidly loose and I'm worried that's going to suddenly break in half someday because of some stress mark I didn't see underneath the torso. The torso panels are made of a softer rubbery plastic, but the hinge is stupid tight and you have to flex things to get them to move into place. It hasn't showed signs of stressing or anything yet, but it still definitely does concern me. The arms on him, on the other hand, feel really loose, like they're going to be dangling by a thread with use over time, but the knee joints are borderline idiot tight. That's something I rag on Hasbro a lot, is the joint inconsistency. Certain joints are tight to the point where you'll snap the figure before it starts to work, and other parts are so loose that they aren't even stable. The only proportional issue that Dinobot has in my opinion is the arms. They're almost down to his ankles, which makes his legs look too stumpy and short, and his hands are gigantic as a result. Let's not bullshit ourselves here. Dinobot is a figure that's imperfect, but he's also the fucking best. I'm a reviewer who doesn't want perfection. I think it dulls out any character that a figure has. That's why Studio Series 86 Retgar really doesn't interest me that much. Reveal the Shield Retgar revels in his imperfection and has fun with his own little vibe, and that's exactly what Dinobot does here beautifully. He captures the spirit and essence of the character and provides the buyer with a stellar nostalgic experience that's genuinely enjoyable. It's an absolute joy to own this goddamn thing after the absolute mindfuck of finding one. but I have to say the hunt was worth it. Tone Zone gets to spam the shit out of bot posting with his god tier toy photography. I get to have Dinobot dab on the haters and make epic Fortnite memes. And I completely lost track of what the hell I was talking about. Get this thing before it becomes asked again in the aftermarket's my point. Happy Pride Month.
Okay.